happy Wednesday evening. I had to think about it for a second. 7:30 p.m. East Coast time. Thanks for joining, guys. I want to chat with you. Wow, heavy of a day. So I almost considered, in all honesty, not doing this live just because here in the US, just a tragedy struck again. And so I've been a little overwhelmed today addressing that school shooting. So my mind's a little frazzled. But if I really want to be honest and talk about, mental health, and this is Mental Health Month and also Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, then I also think for my mental health sake, I like engaging and doing these lives and talking about K-dramas. So in that sense, it's taking care of my mental health, right? I am currently diligently watching My Liberation Notes and Our Blues, but also on the side, Sound of Magic, just about finished The Sound of Magic. And tomorrow I put on hold, and I mentioned on my story for self-care purposes, I needed to see it a little bit more diligently, and it was too much for me at this time. And then also off and on from now on Showtime, which I really like. And I can't even believe I'm adding another one, Uri the Virgin. So those are all side, literally half an episode at a time, because, if we're talking about time and everything that I'm doing, particularly this week, and when tragedy strikes and trauma strikes, that is my expertise, trauma, grief and trauma. I get very busy, and so I have to really focus on that. Yeah, and I hear someone saying they haven't watched any dramas lately. So a year ago, this time, I was so busy, actually just as busy as now, maybe a little less, and I didn't watch dramas because by the time I got into bed, I was so tired. It was 8 o'clock at night. But my mental health suffered a little bit because I never had a break and turned it off. So I'm actually purposely making sure that either I rewatch, which I do, My Liberation Notes. I'm rewatching some scenes, kind of fun, and even rewatching some scenes of Our Blues, or also watching one episode or half an episode at a time, the other ones that are on Viki. I really, really do like from now on Showtime. It's kind of light, and I'm enjoying that. Tomorrow does seem to be really good, but again, because of the theme and subject, I put it on hold. I got to take care of my own mental health. And then, of course, I just almost finished The Sound of Magic. So that said, I'd love to talk about, let's first start with, I'll save My Liberation Notes. Let's start with Our Blues. I'm going to talk about this one particular, first of all, there's many things to talk about in Our Blues, but I want to point out one particular one for this particular deep dive so I'm not overwhelming everybody. The scene in episode 13, not the latest one, Mijeong and Eun-hee, right? A lot about their friendship, as well as Kim Woo-bin's character and Han Ji-min's character. And I know their real names, but not their character names. There's that storyline too. But I particularly want to focus on episode 13, where Mijeong talks to her good guy friend about him being physically abused. Do you guys remember that scene? And, thanks for sharing that. Someone saying they're watching a lot of K-dramas because they're hating reality. Yeah, that's difficult to live through reality. Oh, so sorry. Yes, log off if there's going to be spoilers. But in episode 13 of Our Blues, Mijeong offers some comfort after her friend admits to her, a male friend admits to her, that he is being physically abused by his wife. I stopped for a second because I didn't see that coming. I just thought he was unhappy. We all knew he was unhappy. But I really thought, wow, they're being pretty progressive, showing a different angle of what inter-partner domestic violence can look like, actually. And I really thought that was very progressive and very realistic. So in all honesty, I'm pointing out that scene. Now, she didn't know that's what he was going to share. He showed her, visibly, we saw bruises and cuts and things that made you cringe. That's realistic. And then later on, this is a little bit of a spoiler, we see just a good ending to that. But in reality, I wanted to point out abuse, and particularly want to tell you, I don't know the exact data, but because of COVID around the world, including in the US, more domestic violence has occurred. Interpartner violence, domestic abuse, because people have had to move in together or stay in together. And I wanted to just point out that reality. If we're talking mental health, that is very much real, particularly in our community. If I'm talking our community, Asian, it's also a hidden symptom of things where sometimes it's the norm to treat a spouse that way or a partner that way or a family member that way. But I will say, you'll know if it's abuse. That it's just go with your gut. If it doesn't feel right, and it's traumatic and hurtful or painful, then you know. Does that make sense? And you don't need an expert to tell you if something crosses the line of that boundary. And so that has now made sense to me when the husband was kind of miserable with his wife. And again, I thought they were joking about things. And yeah, she was very controlling. By the way, interpartner violence, domestic abuse, the control is a big thing. Control, okay? So I think that's super important that we are well aware about that control, right? They want that control, and physical power, having that domination is very important in that abusive relationship. So the fact that a male pointed that out, I thought that's great. So understand abuse comes in many forms. It's not just one way. It's not just females. On the other end, even in the US, there's a big case of a celebrity couple, ex-couple, where the male talks about being abused. So I just thought, oh my gosh, that's like a mirror. Or maybe the writer just found that, to be like kind of in that parallel process. But I thought that was well done and pointing out, and I just made a mental health connection. It's triggering, but I wanted to point that out, that is actually very realistic. I'm going to pause here because I see some comments. Okay, I don't know what that means. Anybody have, okay, here it is. Okay, anybody have comments about, I'm not sure what you're talking about exactly here, so please feel free to expand on that. But I'm talking specifically about the Our Blue scene. I'm talking about K-dramas. And I want you to know that it's super important to think about that and just have a different perspective of what abuse can look like. So that's just that. There's so much to share about Eunhee and Mijeong's relationship, and I'm going to start doing YouTube deep dives to really get into that, but also very brilliantly done. She says one line I'll point out in Mijeong's relationship. Now, we learn a lot about just how she viewed Eunhee the whole time, where Eunhee maybe misunderstood her. But at the end of the day, I think she made a good point of like, hey, if we're that close, right, you could have literally talked to me first. It is I would say, very difficult in all cultures to confront somebody, even if you're close to them, to say, I'm really not liking the way you're treating me. I don't feel, I don't feel valued. I don't feel good about our friendship. But that is, I want to say, the loyal thing and the right thing to do if they're your friend. Does that make sense? Now, it's even harder in certain cultures, right? We go around it in Asian culture, and let's not talk about it. We'll talk about it behind their back. We'll talk about it with family members, but that's not right. And that's what Mijeong was pointing out, and I could see, and you could see Eunhee thinking about it. That doesn't mean Mijeong's behavior I endorse either. Treating Eunhee that way because she took her for granted. That's not what I'm saying either. But I really thought that was important because that is how much most friendships go kaput, kind of diminish because folks don't talk to each other. It's hard to talk to somebody about your feelings and say, you hurt me. But it is very important to do that. Okay? And by the way, if you have to do that, here's a tip. Always start with I gave you a poor example when I said you hurt me. Don't say you. Say, I was very hurt by something you said. Now you can say you there, right? I felt like you took me for granted. I feel like you take me for granted. I'm hurt a lot. I completely feel like you neglect me. Do you see all the I's there? Very important to say. Why? The person doesn't get as defensive hearing you say that. They're like, oh, Jeannie just said she feels upset. She's hurt. She's neglected. When you start with you, trust me, when someone says to you, yeah, you always do that. Yeah, what's your problem? Why do you do it that way, right? You're like, excuse me, you get defensive, right? No. That's why it's important to start with I, so you own it. So that's a side note. Great job, Our Blues, pointing out the male perspective or the men's perspective of physical abuse. Okay, let's go to my liberation notes. Trying to keep it short here. I always say that. All right, what scene am I going to bring up? Ding, 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 ding. Okay. I meant to kind of tease it in a story today, and then I got completely busy. There is a particular scene that I love, aside from the ending of episode 14, but I loved during just the grieving time. So this is a spoiler. If you haven't watched it, then you should log off. But just that first of all, that was a twist. I mean, I sat there going, what just happened? What just happened? Do you feel like that? It's almost like the red sleeve. I went, what just happened? So that threw me for a loop. And actually, when we initially thought, oh, the mom's not around, guess where I went to? I don't know if you went here. I went to, oh, I think she left her husband. Why would I go there though? Right? Not saying that's good, not saying that's bad, but thinking in my head, oh, she's not around. She left the family or left the husband. Because I'm going to go back to the dad. Do you remember a couple weeks ago when I did a live, I talked about the family system. That's what I do. I'm a family therapist. I look at everything in terms of a system and a family. I still watch the dad. And in episode 14, I think it was episode 14 or 13, we saw a glimpse of the dad's heart. A glimpse of the dad that he is proud of his kids, or from afar, you know, the typical Korean Asian thing. You watch your kids from afar and you're so happy. That is so realistic. And even as an Americanized Western Asian mom, I also do that. I'm guilty of that. That's a pattern that we have to unlearn. It's not really healthy to go to never tell your kids anything, right? I mean, I'm very adamant about that. And I work hard at it going, oh my gosh, why can't I just say that I'm proud of them, right? And, you know, Chang Hee was saying constantly, you know, very sweet middle son, the only son, that his dad never said that to him. And when he said so sadly, I mean, of course, tears were like this. How come you don't treat me like cool, Mr. Cool? Do you guys remember that scene? That actually made me really tear up because I do see that, you know, in families. Why can't you treat this person better than me, your own daughter, your own son? And he said that to his dad, the brother, right? The sibling. And the dad is just kind of listening, pausing as he normally does, no words. Then we see him from afar admiring his kid. This was maybe several years ago. It wasn't like current time. And that the scene that I want to talk about, that I just want to point out to you, was when the family was sitting together, the mom was no longer around, and they're kind of trying to have a normal meal. And the siblings find out about Mijeong not having to give her money. Remember, she spent money to an ex-boyfriend, gave him lots of money, and then he disappeared from the country, all of that. The reason how she met Koo and got to know him was that, right? When she's like, don't tell my parents, I'm going to send mail to you because I lent someone money, blah, 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 right? And then they find out about it. The sister finds out about it and they confront her in that critical scene. And she's like crying, right? Because it's just like something she hid. And they're like, why'd you hide that? Blah, blah, blah. The sister's like, show me your bank. It was very confrontational. The dad's just kind of like listening because he's like, what just happened? What's going on? How did she loan this money? And then the brother, he has some good one-liners. Oh gosh, you know, that actor, I really love him. Drawing a blank on the name. But the fact that I want to say is he says, well, you know what? Like, the family's the last place I'd go to share things. That's the line. I paused. I wouldn't tell my family either. I wouldn't tell you guys. Okay, so the reason why that bothered me is all goes back, and this is not me pinpointing blame. It's not good to do that, but talk about how the central focus of parents, and particularly now the dad that I brought out a couple weeks ago, that stems from that. If you don't feel like you can tell your parents or family members, or your care protectors, caregivers, in your deepest time of need, right? Whether you make a bad financial decision, which happens, you make mistakes, which happens, you do something wrong, which happens, right? And you can't go to your own parents. And I see that, and it's some of them devastating consequences because the fear of disappointing your parents, number one. Two, and also the parents don't allow that space of, you will do it this way. I hope you don't mess up, that kind of thing. You know, that's also that space. And I believe the dad did all of that. The very traditional cultural father, I saw that in him. I mean, sometimes I just wanted him to speak. I don't know about you. You know, I just wanted him to say something, but it was silence. And I think that is also realistic portrayal. But in that moment, the brother's like, yeah, why would she tell you? I wouldn't. I would do everything not to tell you. And I wanted to point that out because I just wanted to challenge you. What can we do if that's the case for you when you don't feel safe? When I say safe, I just mean emotionally safe to feel like you could share a mistake. and you did something big, like loan your life savings to an ex-boyfriend that you thought you loved, and he took advantage and took off with the money, and that literally devastated you financially, right? That's a huge, huge burden. That's how she begins. Just her relationship with Ku, right? Kushi. Ku Gijeong, which we learned is his name. So I'm just pointing that out more like you to understand and be cognizant of, if you're not sharing something with your family members, if you don't feel safe, or you feel like you're going to be a burden or disappointment, first share with somebody else that you feel safe with, that talk it through, right? And know at the end of the day, I think we hope that your family, your parents would hear that, because I will say, when you hold in that burden, and I think at that moment when she was crying, I think this is my interpretation, okay? My interpretation was that she wasn't so much sad and fearful of being heard. Part of that was relief, is what I'm thinking. That, oh my God, it's finally coming out. It like, and then, she spoke up saying, "You're not my mom," which, Mijeong has that to her, right? But that relief of, it's out, and now I'm just like, oh my gosh, my parents find out. I'm like, my dad found out, and my brothers are saying something, I'm feeling shameful. But then the relief when the brother is literally like validating her, saying, I wouldn't share it either. In fact, you guys would be the family would be the last people I come to, kind of thing. But let's just be real. I don't think he meant generally. I think that particular family, that's how it was. And the brother was actually the best one in talking to his dad. Isn't that ironic? He would bring out the very worst things, but say to his dad, going, you don't care about me. You show Ku more attention than me. I want to be your son. I want to do this with you. He was very, very good at communicating. I want you to learn from that, actually. Learn from the brother of the family, right? But also bringing up that reality that he's the one challenging his dad. And then guess what? This is why I love K-dramas and how things, it's not just K-dramas, how families work. He is the closest to his father at this time. Now, we believe that Mijeong was the favorite of the dad, and Chang Hee and the dad were kind of at odds, right? But look at who's taking care of him and being there for him, gelling with him, edging him on when they're doing like a road rage thing. That was funny. That was kind of comical. Seeing them gel, I wanted to bring that up. That all you see is all the nuances of that relationship shifting, and the dad we're seeing a little bit more to him. So I'm going to pause on that, but I just wanted to say, yes, that is a critical scene. Now, when he said, yeah, why would she come to the family? And then I don't know if you noticed this, go back to that scene. The camera goes to the dad. That is what I was telling you. It could have gone to Mijeong with her crying. It could have gone to the sister looking all like ticked off. Or stay on the brother, him saying, yeah, why would Mijeong go to the family? I mean, you guys are the last people I'd go to. It panned to the dad. I don't know. I thought that was dramatic. But that's guess what I would do next. So if someone was saying that to me in a family session, I'm going to tell you how I would say this. All three siblings and the dad, Mijeong crying, and then being discovered that she gave all this money. Her sister pissed off at her for doing that, saying, oh my gosh, how stupid are you, blah, blah, blah. Then the brother kind of coming in, being a mediator, as middle children tend to do, and the dad not saying anything. Who would I turn to next from that comment? People, you guys, I'm going to ask you, is people answering this, by the way? Oh, I got to look at my comments here. Sorry about that. I was going to say, who would I turn to after the comment that the brother made? Yeah, why would she go to us as a family? I would hide it too. She probably learned from what I went through financially, right? He said that as an older brother. And then let's just say the camera panned to the dad, and me as a therapist. Would I be looking at the dad? Someone answered correctly. My next person would not be the dad. I would go to Mijeong. Not because she's crying. I wouldn't say, Mijeong, why are you crying? No. I'd say, Mijeong, is your brother correct? You felt like you could not go to the family. You could not share with your dad, your sister, and your brother about the financial distress you're in, and then wait for her answer, and then go from there. And then what I would try to do is get it back to the father to talk about, not to point blame, to just be like, Dad, how can we create this more communicative space now that you're all still grieving and your wife is gone? Does that make sense? But yes, I would turn it to Mijeong and ask her to share openly why she couldn't go to the family. I would even challenge her going, okay, who did you go to? Oh, I went to Ku. Maybe she would say like, yeah, I had him hide my mail. And I'd be like, why did you feel like you needed to do that? That's an example. You just got a little brief of a glimpse of a therapy session there, but that's how I would do that. So that said, I hope that helps. Again, ask yourself, who are you going to first before your family? But then how can they help you also in the end? Confront does not mean angrily. Like people think confront and they think like it's a conflict. Confront means you're literally facing them saying, Mom, Dad, brother, sister, Anni, Oppa, I did this. I gave $10,000 to somebody. I'm feeling miserable about it. I'm so upset. The guy took off my money. Can you help me? I'm just telling you. I mean, it's a load off your chest, really. It helps, right? But you got to be in that safe space. So not everybody can do that, but I hope that's where you're gearing towards. You don't want to stay in that burden. That's going to be very difficult for your mental health. So thank you for answering that. Very good. Yeah, and the brother, that's what I'm saying. This brother, what is his last hit? What's the actor's name? He's in so much stuff that I watched. Beauty Inside. Anyways, he is the one that says all of these one-liners that I think shows just the character he is, right? The most sensitive actually of the three and the most in tune, I think. And the fact that he was sharing so openly with his dad, he was the best thing to do that. Learn from him. Now, granted, there were tense conversations, but I've said this before in a lot of my YouTube videos. I'd rather you confront and it be like, boom, an explosion, which by the way, I see a lot in sessions, but then you break that wall down and things will change. Now, it might be a little bit worse, like the tension, people getting mad at you, but I will guarantee, almost guarantee, it's not always possible, that you will feel better. So Mijeong crying, I don't think it was necessarily out of shame and oh my God, I got found out like a little kid. Just the relief and going and maybe hearing her brother validating her, you know, and also she's grieving her mom, right? All of that is happening. But it's not the shame of holding it back. I think she needed to let it go. And that was plaguing her. And you know that she felt, there were so many times she said that to Ku going, you're just making me feel bad about that decision, right? That's actually like literally how their relationship started. Okay, I babbled on and on, but I just wanted to say thank you for joining this live. This was actually good for me. Yeah, he's amazing and this actually all of them are. I love it. We have the finale this weekend. I will do a final live deep dive on the finale with you guys. And please bring in all your comments. Yes, someone said that she was liberated. I was going to save all that for the final deep dive, but that's what liberation means. You know, feeling free of that burden of, they're talking a lot about life, right? But she's talking about everything that she's feeling and thinking under the sun. I mean, at one point she's facing death with this crazy looking dog, you know, facing that, but feeling liberated as she's doing it. She did it. I mean, there's so many metaphors of liberation, right? What's the Korean word? Gijeong, right? It's so amazing. And yes, at the end of the day, for your mental health, for your emotional and your social and psychological well-being, it is important to continue that liberation, liberating feeling, expressing your emotions, expressing your thoughts in the safe way possible, in the best way possible. That's always the goal. Thanks for sharing, or thanks for being with me. The truth will set you free. The next live will also be next Wednesday Eastern time, so it might be Thursday morning if you're in Asia. And we will, if I do it sooner, I'll let you know, but we will discuss the finale. I wish it wasn't ending, but thank goodness we still have our blues, and then I'll go to the other ones I've been watching on the side. All right, have a good evening, morning, afternoon, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.